Imagine you're in the middle of a divorce, you scavenge together the money, you buy a house, and your ex is on the title. Believe it or not, this happens more times than you would think. And so today we're meeting with Kelsey to go over all of the ways to avoid that. Also, a lot of questions from viewers and people who've written in about what to do with a home they might own with an ex-spouse. Hey guys, my name's Rebecca Green. I'm a divorce real estate specialist, and this is Kelsey.
Hi, I'm with Chicago Title here in the Kansas City Metro. And Rebecca, thank you so much for asking me to do this. We do get calls on a regular basis with all of the questions that we're going to cover today. So I do want to mention, I'm not an attorney. I'm not licensed real estate agent. I am a salesman, and we've done 10,000 closings and worked with 2,000 real estate agents and attorneys in the KC Metro. So I'm just kind of speaking from experience. Always consult an attorney or your real estate agent, Rebecca, with any questions.
All right, love to. Well, one thing I did want to mention, because sometimes people catch these YouTube videos and they're not in Missouri and Kansas. So every state has different laws as far as it goes with owning homes and selling homes and buying homes with its title or escrow. I mean, it gets funky out there. So it could be very state specific. We'll try to highlight a few things that happen in Missouri and Kansas. Even if you're not from these states, I think it'll be really good information for what to do when you own a home with someone that you no longer want to be married to.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I think what I'd like to just do is hop in and read some of the questions that we've had from people.
Okay.
These are a lot in the form of like a Dear Kelsey letter, because sometimes people they just need help. And a lot of times talking with an attorney, neither of us are attorneys, but that'll cost you $250 to God knows how much an hour.
A little bit.
And so if you can find industry professionals that can answer your question, sometimes even better than attorneys can, that's exactly why we're here. So I want to start off with a crazy story. This lady says, Dear Kelsey, my husband and I were married for 12 years and we finally agreed to sell our family home. Now that our divorce is nearly final. We've lived here since our oldest daughter was in kindergarten. She's 15 now, and I just want this chapter closed. I feel that. But a few days before closing, our agent called and said there was a problem with title from years ago. Something about an old lien that no one even knew existed. How do things like this happen, and what can I do to prevent them?
That is a great question, and we do get that a lot. A lot of people think that title insurance is in effect during the term that you own the home. It's only good through the date that you purchase the property. So if you buy the property on, what'd she say, 15 years ago?
Yeah.
January 1st, 2010, then your policy insures you from January 1st all the way back to, the Civil War or the beginning of time, so to speak. What might come up are maybe you took out a home equity loan and you paid it off, but you never closed it. So there's still an old lien on your property. Or maybe 2010, that was during the recession. Maybe you refinanced your house and got a better interest rate because you had a variable rate and went to a fixed loan. And that loan never got released. And so it's still outstanding. We would just ask you for account information and we would work with you to resolve the situation. Our goal is to help you close whatever we may find, to resolve it prior to closing and use closing as our leverage to get it done. You think that answers your question?
I think that answers the question. And something I will say, because this comes up a lot in my initial consultations with people before they sell a house, if you have ever opened a home equity line of credit, even if you've paid it off, you have to close the lien out, right?
Got to sign the letter.
And there are horror stories that I've heard personally. I won't share the client's name or anything, where they had a home equity line of credit. They thought they paid it off. When the husband decided he was going to leave, he went ahead and pulled out another $30,000.
The checks, because you didn't rip up the checks after you paid off the home equity line.
Yep.
And the spouse went and
it happens. They
does.
get mad and it happens, and it happens and they get mad.
And those lines are good for 15 years after the date that you took them out.
Oh, that's good to know. A home equity is good for 15 years.
15 years.
The value. Okay.
So I think it's good for 10 years and you can draw up to 15 years after for a total of 25 years is the way that a standard document is written in Missouri and Kansas.
Good to know. All right. Next question. Dear Kelsey, I moved out 6 months ago and found a perfect little bungalow for me and my 2 boys. My divorce is not final yet, but I'm the only one on the loan. My ex hasn't contributed a dime since he left, and my lender says I can close on the new place. But my friend warned me that my husband's name could still end up on my title. Is that true? And what really happens when someone buys a house before the divorce is official?
I love that. Yes, your friend is correct. Well, and your loan officer is correct. You can buy a house. I would, if it was my mother or my sister, I would say, wait until the divorce is final to buy the house. But there may be reasons, school districts, the price is right, interest rates right, that you want to go ahead and buy now. So yes, we will allow you to. In Missouri, you can sign a purchase money mortgage without your spouse, as long as it's purchase money. However, your husband, it is going to get tangled up. Technically he would have a right to the property. It's a very gray area. And in title insurance, we don't deal with gray. It's black and white, and we want to clear up all things. So we would, when you go to sell or refinance, we would require his signature. Long way around is my advice would be, if you buy prior to getting a divorce, have the divorce decree include a legal description for the property that you've purchased and state that the property has been awarded to you, and require that your spouse sign a quitclaim deed before the ink is dry on the divorce decree and record that with the county, and then it will no longer be an issue. But while you're married, you would have a right to the property, or she, and if they got remarried, that could cause some extra stickiness.
Yep, everybody can have all the rights. It gets so weird. There are ways around it. You just have to let the title company know what's going on. And I always tell my clients, it's got to be full disclosure all across the board. If you're like, hey, I pulled this money from my retirement, we're using it for this, you just have to tell everybody what you're doing, because hopefully the people that are in your corner are indeed on your team. Anything else on that one?
A lot of people ask what a quitclaim deed is.
Okay, good.
So the difference between a warranty deed warrants that nobody else has a right to the property, your heirs, there's no judgments, liens like that. We would be asking the ex-spouse to sign a quitclaim deed to quit their right to the property. And it would only be their purposes. And it needs to say that they're a single person when they do that. It's not valid.
Oh.
If you are a married person and you sign a quitclaim deed, unless you die, in my opinion, as a random person, it's completely invalid.
That's a great opinion. Yeah, I think that is something a lot of people run into, because divorces take so long in Missouri and Kansas for a variety of reasons. But what I think people run into is they find a rental, maybe a 6-month rental. Well, they're not divorced at the end of 6 months in so many cases, but they're close, and they have like a verbal agreement. And then they go to buy a house, and it just gets messy. So you can do it. There are ways around it, but you've got to make sure that your ex-spouse is on board and willing to sign something. Otherwise, they're going to own the house with you, which is no fun. Okay, number 3. This one is titled, he's not on the title. Do I still need his signature? Dear Kelsey, I bought my house 3 years before I got married. It's only in my name, and my husband never paid a dime towards the mortgage. Now that we're splitting, I want to sell it and start over closer to my parents, but my realtor says we may need his signature at closing. Is that true, even though the title is in my name alone?
So, yes, there is an old adage, which is 1 to buy, 2 to sell. And basically, most states, Missouri and Kansas, are marital rights states. I like to think about this like, what if you were happily married and you passed away? And you had bought this property yourself, would you expect your spouse to inherit the property? Would you want that?
Right.
The law is written in that manner that you would, you have this contract called a marriage, and you've decided together to join assets. So yes, you will have to have your spouse's signature to sell. And this comes up in so many ways, not just a divorce, but an inherited property, where the spouse will be like, that has nothing to do with me. I never lived there. It wasn't my family. And title insurance, again, black and white, no gray. We want to confirm that nobody has a right to the property and that we're giving free and clear title to the new buyer. So we need the spouse to sign the deed or to deed out at closing whenever possible.
Yep, no matter what. And it sucks. That's so hard, especially whenever people feel like they brought an asset in and it's their asset. Even if your spouse is like, that's your house, you keep it, I just want to move on with my life, and everyone has agreed. Just because you verbally agreed doesn't mean that the title and the law agree. So you've got to follow the letter of the law for the state that you're in. Other states may do that differently. I don't know.
It feels like 1 to buy, 2 to sell is a pretty universal thing.
It makes sense. You realize as you're going through divorce, a marriage is a legally binding contract. And that's, at the end of the day, that's how the government sees it. That's how a lender sees it. It's a contract that you've signed. So until that contract is not signed, you're stuck together.
Until you've agreed to disagree.
All right. Now, this is something, the next question comes up a lot. and it's this lady has a whole scenario, maybe that's a guy this time that wrote in, a whole scenario on what happens to the money at closing whenever you're buying a house. Because for so many people, I'd say 50% would be my guess. Selling a house has to happen in the beginning so they can each have funds to hire an attorney, get their separate houses, whatever the case may be. So, dear Kelsey, my ex and I just accepted an offer on our house, and now I'm panicking about what happens after closing. We've been married 14 years, have 3 kids, and both need the proceeds to move forward. But we don't exactly trust each other. The title company says they can hold the funds, but I don't really understand how that works. Can you explain what options divorcing couples have for handling the sale proceeds safely and fairly?
So first, I would never recommend that a title company hold your funds in escrow. We prefer never to hold money longer than a week or two, max 30 days. There's a lot of compliance issues that come into place when you are responsible for other people's money, and it could cause us penalties if we accidentally broke the law. Plus, it places your money at risk, leaving it with us and having no interest in it. However, your attorney has an escrow account as well, at least in Missouri and Kansas. And so they absolutely could hold those funds for you if you are not able to come to an agreement on how they need to be dispersed. If you are in agreement, then we can split them. One of the things that happens at closing is we have you sign a seller proceeds instruction letter. And it would instruct us how you want those proceeds divided. If you wanted 50% to go to one of you and 50% to the other, or maybe you had hey, 25% for this and 75% for that because there's a retirement account. Or
Right.
We are not here to negotiate your divorce. Our job is to follow your written instructions. If you've already come to terms on a marital, a separation agreement?
Separation agreement, yes.
A separation agreement, we can follow the instructions on that and include that with the proceeds letter and have you reaffirm at closing that that's how you'd like those funds divided, and then provide you with the settlement statement for the judge at the divorce.
It's
Whatever we
easy.
can do to assist you. When it's civil, we really like it. If it's not civil, you can hold it with your attorney.
It's easy. It's official. I had a divorce the other day, and husband and ex-wife were at the same table, and they were only about halfway through things. But what they were trying to do is there was a $10,000 credit card payment that needed to be paid off. And up until that point, they were like, we're not going to pay it. Tough luck. We'll settle it at divorce, however far down the road. But as they were sitting there together signing, they're like, hey, if you're ready to pay it off, so am I. And because they both agreed at the closing table and they both signed, the title company was like, I can do whatever you want with the funds. These are your funds. And they decided right there to make a change. So I think that as long as both people are there at the time and agree, or you don't have to sit with each other and sign. I certainly didn't in my divorce.
Yeah.
But as long as you're both on the same page with what happens with the money, either somebody else holds it so you can agree, or sometimes it might be like, hey, you take 10K, I'll take 10K, and the rest goes until we can agree with it. But a lot of times you need that cash up front. So.
And I do want to caution that we are not your banker, and I'll just leave it at that. So we do love it when you have instructions in advance and we can follow them. And you're right. We don't have to close together. We could close online. We could send a notary. You can close one at a time. We're convenient.
What happens so many times at a closing office, and it's why I really like working with incredible people, is it's emotional. And it's either emotional because it's good for people because it's their first home, a second, whatever, it's fun. Or sometimes it's emotional because you're literally signing away a phase of your life that you thought was going to last forever. And so I encourage my clients to come to sit in person with friendly faces who we may not be in your closest circle of friends, but we care and we get it. And it can be really helpful to see that there's life on the other side of divorce when there's supported, educated people here cheering you on, no matter what side of the divorce you're on. So the world gets better. It really does. You know what? I do have a crazy story about a title company. It was kind of a little mom and pop title company that held a client's money for them. They couldn't agree. Husband and wife couldn't agree on whose attorney was even going to hold the funds. And so the title company was like, hey, we'll hold it here.
Okay. What happened?
So they hold the money. Not good.
Oh, no.
This divorce has been over for like a year and a half. The title company still has the money because there were some caveats where it was like, hey, we'll be able to disperse it when we pay off this, or there were a couple of houses involved. And so it was like, when this house sells, we'll disperse the money. Well, that house hasn't sold. So the title company a year and a half later still has like $30,000 sitting in their escrow account. Obviously the title company is like, we should have never agreed to that. both spouses are like, we should have never agreed to that, and it's just stuck there.
Yeah. If you're not to a place where you can agree with the disbursement of the proceeds, then maybe you shouldn't sell, or you should wait till you get divorced, because then there's no better written instructions than the divorce decree.
Right. Right. And usually I tell people at the beginning, now that I've been doing this long enough, hey, when we get to closing, you have to tell me what to do with these funds, either your attorney, his attorney, or we're dispersing all of it. But you have, and so I try to give people that 30-day heads up with the big faux pas I had however long ago. You've got to make a decision you're both comfortable with before we walk into that title company. Otherwise, there's 30K sitting there. I mean, what could you do with 30K right now?
Well,
I can do it.
And poor mom and pop and the amount of time and trouble and money that they're spending monitoring this, because I'm sure that they're going back and forth and how much interest did you make and
What do you do with the interest?
all
it's
the
a whole
extra
deal.
stress. And never mind if the auditors come in, and
Yeah.
I feel bad for them.
Yeah, it was. Okay, so moving on to another ugly situation. Dear Kelsey, I have been separated, living in our house with my teenage son while my wife moved in with her new boyfriend. We finally found a buyer. Now she's refusing to come to closing and sign the deed unless I agree to split the furniture and give her the dog. I'm exhausted. I just want this over with. What happens when one spouse won't sign the papers? Can the sale still move forward?
Well, if you had put the legal description in the divorce decree and had a quitclaim deed signed at the time of the divorce, none of this would have been happening. But hindsight's 2020, right? So in this situation, you can take your spouse back to court. You have the divorce decree behind you that said they were supposed to do this. We would have been able to record the divorce decree, so you could have just left it at that. Unfortunately, with divorces, sometimes people do this because they're not really they're not ready to let go. So you could sue them, and then the court can order the house to be sold, and we could do that in lieu of their signature. And so there's that extra expense that you would have to spend that you may or may not be reimbursed because they won't even sign.
It can get really messy. The other thing that your ex-spouse is doing is putting herself liable for any expenses the buyers have the buyer thought they were moving the house. They may have sold their home already. They may have moving expenses, and people do sue frequently if either party defaults on the contract. And it's typically more than just your earnest money amount. Earnest money is what's paid in the beginning of a contract to say, hey, I'm serious about this house. So that would probably get dispersed back, but there's typically more on the line than just earnest money. It helps when she realizes she's not just affecting his life, but another family's life too. So that's ugh.
Yeah, the appraisal, the inspection, you might have put down a deposit with the lender. You might have bought furniture.
Yeah.
Like as a buyer, all of the things that I'm like, what do you mean you can't sell my house? Sell me the house.
This is a part where I tell people, especially when we're talking about sales and houses, it's very, very important that all of this is in writing and that you are not talking one-on-one to your spouse on a cell phone or even in text messages, because those are typically not accepted in court as a legal document. Emails are a little more widely accepted, but even that, really having a third-party conversation with, hopefully she has an attorney, and you can say, hey, Mrs. Attorney, your client's not signing the papers. We got a big issue. And that's something that I would advise going back and bringing in the big dogs.
Absolutely.
To force her hand a little bit. If you've signed a document. Now, typically in the beginning of a contract, you would have both husband and wife sign and agree to sell the house and agree to the price. It sounds like that's what has happened. So she really is just defaulting totally on the contract. We can't make her sign. You can't sell without her signature or without a requirement from a judge. So
I do see it often, though, that, because the property's been awarded via the divorce decree, that you would only see the signature of the spouse that was awarded the property. And then the title company, because quitclaim deeds aren't always filed as soon as the divorce is signed.
Good point.
And so a lot of times we're enabling that process because the ex is like, I'm not signing anything until I get paid. And we're like, great. So we have this deed ready for you, and we will hold it in escrow for you until such time as the proceeds are ready. And then we will pay you what the divorce said you get.
You can use some of that money for therapy, which is everyone in this situation.
Yes, we are here to help you with all of the things.
A benefit. Yes. Okay. So next, when title work saves the day, which happens a lot, really you do need good people behind you that know what they're doing to set up the next phase of your life. It's really, really important. All right. Dear Kelsey, I bought my first home when I was 28, long before I met my husband. We've been married for 8 years. And we did a bunch of renovations together, like a new kitchen, finished basement, backyard pool. He's saying he's entitled to half the equity if we sell, even though the mortgage and title are only in my name. How does that really work? Is marriage to change ownership even if you owned the house first?
It doesn't. It would only be your home. Marriage, that contract gives him a right to your assets or her a right to your assets. Like you said, it is a contract. You're combining your lives. If he invested that money, he's going to have a good case with his attorney, or she is going to have a good case with her attorney. He should be reimbursed.
Yeah.
And if you had, again, if you'd been in a happy marriage and you had passed away, you would expect the court to award the property to your spouse, even though they weren't on the deed, regardless of whether or not they'd invested any money into the property. So if your intent is for this asset to remain separate, then you should make that so, regardless of whether or not you're happy or sad in your marriage. You can have a prenuptial agreement signed.
Right.
You can have them sign a beneficiary deed, a quitclaim deed. It's not necessarily valid until the divorce decree is final, but it does state their intent to not be a part of the property. It puts that in writing.
And typically what I've seen, because I get a peek behind the curtains at a lot of this type of stuff, especially renovations for houses and things, a judge really only cares about the value of the home, how much the mortgage is on it. And maybe if the spouse came in with the house, they might say, hey, your equity at that time was X, or you used X for a down payment on the home. That's yours, but the rest of this is going to be split. Because how in the world do you prove that it was my paycheck for the pool and not yours? There's no way to go back unless you both agree and sort all of that out. And if you're to the point that you guys are fighting over it, a judge is going to say, I'm only going to do what I can prove here. And even if you have a statement from your bank that that pool came from my bank account and I made the payment, well, we were married. And maybe I paid for the pool because you paid for the insurance. So they typically tell you to go kick rocks and figure it out on your own unless we can agree. And otherwise, it's probably going to be an equitable divorce. I've stopped saying a 50-50 because what I've learned in talking with a lot of really good, fair divorce attorneys is equitable doesn't mean 50-50, and 50-50 doesn't mean equitable. There's a lot of situations where maybe it was a stay-at-home wife and the husband had been off working for years and had 3 or 4 degrees and a master's degree. His continued ability to make money throughout the rest of his life will always be higher than hers. And so if you're looking at an equitable divorce or splitting the proceeds from this home with the pool, like we talked about, in an equitable way, it might look a lot different than 50-50. Because as the stay-at-home spouse, maybe I need to have 100% of those proceeds in order for it to really be a fair process. So this is one of those times that I just tell people, make sure you've got good people in your corner that are helping you really talk through this, provide all the documentation you possibly can, and ask for what you want, but you may not get it. And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but divorce does get messy, and it's just important that as all of this is getting sorted out, you keep really good records.
Absolutely. Put it in writing.
Put it all in writing. Do you have anything else to wrap up with? Any other sage advice?
I would say that we have worked with Rebecca Green for years as a real estate agent in the Kansas City Metro, and she takes excellent care of her clients. Whether you are in a divorce situation or you are happily married or you are a first-time home buyer and single, whatever the situation is, she has the guidance that you need. She'll be honest with you. She's empathetic, the negotiation skills and the knowledge of our real estate community and the pricing and all of the things outside of the divorce situation that you need in a good real estate agent. You can trust Rebecca Green with your business.
Totally unscripted. Nice.
Well, it's true. So it makes it easy.
So nice.
But thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Great.